Well, Dayo Duyile is one of those young and old guys in the profession of journalism in our country, Nigeria. He is he's an old man now, going to 83, but in those days, Dayo Duyile was a very good reporter with the Daily Times. Was a man about town, going about gathering information, reporting news for so many newspapers, and started life as a very young, untrained teacher before going into journalism in those days. So he's a man of many parts. Even at old age now, he's still a man of many parts. He hails from Ondo town and schooled in Ondo town and some riverine areas of Octogenarian in his early years, and climbed gradually into a professional career as a journalist. My primary school started in Octogenarian Township, where my father was a court registrar with the old colonial regime in those days, in the early 50s, mid 50s to late 50s. We grew up, many of my brothers and sisters were born in that riverine area. Even those of us who were born in Ondo town were taken back to the riverine area where my father was a court registrar in the old native authority. So we schooled in Catholic primary school, Methodist primary school, variously Anglican primary school located in Octogenarian area. I personally went to Methodist primary school and later Catholic RCM, they call it RCM. Roman Catholic Mission School in those days. And I finished my primary school there and went to a secondary modern school known as St. Louis Secondary Modern School in that same town, Octogenarian. It was owned by Catholic before I migrated back home here to Ondo and went to a secondary school, grammar school in Ibadan. My higher education, it took me many years after my GCE to go to have a higher education at the University of Lagos. My higher education didn't come in time because I was busy as a reporter with the Daily Times in Lagos, but something jolted me into pursuing higher education. When we were in the Daily Times, a policy was brought up by the managing director and chairman of Daily Times, Alhaji Patne Joseph, blessed memory, that anybody who would become an editor of Daily Times in future must have a university degree. At that time, I wasn't thinking of going to university at all. I was comfortable with being trained on the job because my training didn't start with Daily Times. It started with Nigerian Tribune in Ibadan. So, but with my advanced level papers, I thought I was okay. I could become editor anytime if I had the experience. But Alhaji just said no. you must have a degree. So that was what prompted me to go to the University of Lagos for my first degree in 1971. And I joined Daily Times in 1964. So it was about 7 years after, or 6 years after, or 3 years after, sorry, that I took the idea of going to the university. And I did my diploma before I went for my first degree. Yeah, my experience can be divided into three segments. I started as a newspaper reporter, then I moved into television and radio, then I moved into magazine journalism. So I divide my experience into three. I started with the Nigerian Tribune in Ibadan in 1960. After having a short period as a trainee with the Southern Nigeria Defender, which was one of Dr. Azikwe's newspapers. It was another newspaper after the West African Pilot, which Dr. Azikwe founded in 1937. But the Southern Nigeria Defender was founded in 1945, and Chief Anthony Nahu was the editor. But at the time I joined that paper in 1960, for 1 year, it was edited by one Stephen, I've forgotten his name now, the editor of that newspaper. In any case, Stephen Iwanya, Mr. Stephen Iwanya. I stayed 1 year there before moving to the Nigerian Tribune under Alhaji Lateef Jakande, and my editor was Akin Emiola. He's now a professor of law at the University of Benin. Well, it was from the Tribune that I went to Daily Times actually, and my real journalistic life started with the Daily Times, because it was during the time that Chief Obafemi Awolowo had problems, political problems, crisis in the party, and he was accused of treasonable felony against the Balewa government. And so my editor told me that, or gave me the assignment to follow that story up, the arrest of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, his house arrest, and his appearance in the court, and his trial, the subsequent trial. I was one of the reporters for Daily Times that covered that. So I had the opportunity of seeing Chief Awolowo inside out, both in politics and in his legal profession. That gave me an opportunity to be very close to Chief Obafemi Awolowo and his other associates at that time. But after Daily Times, I went to join the new staff of WNTV, WNPS. That was Western Nigeria Television Service, which was established in 1959 under the leadership of Chief Obafemi Awolowo as Premier of Western Nigeria. I joined WNTV in 1966, shortly before the first military coup of January 15. I think I joined them in December 1965. The military coup met me there that early morning. I was on early morning duty with my editor, and the van had come to pick us, and we got to the broadcasting house at Agodi at exactly 5 o'clock, and we met soldiers all over the place. And so we were surprised what happened, and nobody was able to talk to us, but they said we should just go in quietly and continue to do our job. Then all of a sudden, a colonel came and gave a paper to us in the newsroom that this is what we should put into news for broadcast that morning, announcing that the government had been toppled and that a new government will be appointed very shortly. So Mr. Yogunlade, who was the head of programs, and Mr. Yovon, who was also the head of news, were all taken to a separate, secluded area in the television house and briefed on what was happening. And eventually, they also came to us to brief us and said we should cooperate with them. These are soldiers. They said they have taken over the government. That was a very nasty experience that day for all of us, because we were not asked to write what we have observed. They wrote the releases for us to broadcast. And it was a nasty experience, as I said, because I've never had that type of experience before all my life in journalism. But in the afternoon, everything became clear that the military government has been installed in Lagos and all over the country. The other experience was when they assassinated Colonel Fajuyi. I was also still working with the WNTV WNBS. That early morning, the ADC to the military governor, to Colonel Fajuyi, was a very good friend in the newsroom. He was always coming to us in the peaceful days when he was serving his master. But this time around, he came looking so stern and not friendly with any of us in the newsroom, and was taking a position right there in the newsroom, and that nobody should go out, nobody should come in. So we were even using that friendly relationship to talk to him, and he was not ready to answer any question from us, looking so stern and like somebody who didn't even know us at all from Adams. But about 30 minutes after that, we knew that the governor of the state had been kidnapped or taken away, and later we got that he had been assassinated with General Ironsi, who was visiting, and that was the head of state, who was on official visit. So all these experiences with the military, I put them in one of my books, which will be coming out very shortly. My encounter with the what I call the insurgents in a democratic state. So I was with M.K. Abiola's newspaper, we call it the Concord newspaper, National Concord in particular, with some of my colleagues like Dele Giwa of blessed memory, Doyin Abiola, later Doyin Ababa, and even Dele Alake, who is now a minister for steel or something like minerals or something like that. Dele Alake came after us, but we were the foundation members of the Concord. I think I ended my newspaper career with the Concord and began my academic life thereabout in 1986. My experience with the Daily Sketch. Daily Sketch was owned by the Ondo State government, the Oyo State government, the Osho State government. The government, Ekiti, was still in Ondo State then. So they were all joint owners of that, and each of them provided members on the board to represent them. So, as editor of the paper, I was serving 4 masters. And in terms of news display, news editing, and all that, we had problems. Because the Ondo State government would come and say they were not well represented. That this happened in Akure, that thing happened in somewhere, the government did this, the commission one project, and we just give them 2 or 3 paragraphs. Whereas your state did something and we elaborated it. So that type of problem I confronted when I was editor. My general manager was a colleague of mine, Felix Adenaike. The 2 of us had the same mind, in the sense that we agreed that this was a government newspaper, but that in principle the government may be the proprietor, but they are holding this newspaper in trust for the people. So it's not actually government-owned newspaper. Yes, they are financing it, but we were running it for them, but we are running it on the principle of the people have the right to know. That's number one. Two, that the newspaper was being held in trust by the government for the people. But this policy or this principle of ours clashed with the interests of the owners. And so in many times they will invite us to come and explain one thing or the other. It was not very comfortable. It was like what the late chairman of Daily Times, Alhaji Batne, just said, walking on a tightrope. You know, the governor will send for me in Ondo, the government will send for me in Abeokuta, the Ogun State government will be lamenting and criticizing us for doing one thing or the other. So in writing our editorials, we were very, very careful. Because instead of writing praise editorials, we will say, okay, the people admire what the government has done, but we desisted from writing praise editorials in favor of the 3 or 4 governments that own the paper. What we do at times was to make sure that a journalist is assigned to do a sort of overall investigation on any project, and they will write what I call a feature. You know, editorials are more powerful because that's the opinion of the newspaper. So we escaped from all that, because each time we wrote editorial that criticized them, they would summon us for discussions and explanations, which was rampant. It was regular. And so I told them, okay, we should limit our editorials to not praising and not criticizing, except it was very important. Federal government didn't like one editorial that we wrote on Operation Feed the Nation, which was their policy. It was the policy of the federal government to encourage and improve agricultural sector in the country, and voted millions of naira, or was it billion, I don't know, to improve agriculture. And so they were encouraging citizens to even plant food crops at their backyards, in their residences, everywhere. But we discovered from one investigation that the money voted by the government was going to private purse. So we wrote an editorial, Operation Feed the Pockets. And so the president was annoyed. He was Obasanjo then, and I had to be arrested by the SSS. Was it SSS or SS? So I don't know what they were called then. The security people took me to Awolowo Road in Ikoyi, their office, and detained me for about 3 weeks, asking me questions to explain why we should write that type of editorial, which they describe as damaging to the policy of the government. But I said we based our editorial on investigations that some ministers and some government officials were putting the money meant for the program into their pockets, and then that I should show them the evidence. And I said, no, unless if you charge me to court, then I'll show you the evidence. But I can't show you the evidence there. So that made me to stay longer in their detention. It was a very small place, very tight, no bed, one small ramshackle wooden chair there. And I always slept on that chair. At a stage, I refused to take my meals because the meals were not very good for me. And in any case, the NUJ came into my support and they fought for me outside. I was not allowed to read the newspapers, no radio broadcast. I couldn't listen to radio news for about 15 days until they finally asked me to go. That was a very bad experience, and I saw it as a sort of anti. In any case, it was a military regime, so we were in a totalitarian regime. There was no press freedom, or if there was at all, it was only the press freedom that would favor them, not favor the people. I had more than 4 or 5 detentions on different occasions. That was when I was on daily sketch. There was another detention. Yes, in the daily sketch I had about 3. But when I was in Drum magazine, we did an investigative story on the government's attitude to South Africa. At that time, the South African issue was on, and the government was supporting the freedom of Mandela, who was in jail. But we discovered that the money voted by the federal government to assist the liberation movement in South Africa was also being pocketed. We traced some of the money to a bank in England, which was not owned by that organization fighting for Mandela's release. So we queried that type of banking transfer, and then it was I and my editor, incidentally, very brilliant man, he's dead now, Oluwadetile, and Ekiti man. We got a very good story and we published it. And on arrival from London, Adetule was picked up at the airport. Second day, I was visited by the SSS, and they came for me later and they picked me up. We spent about 3 months in detention. But eventually they didn't charge us to court. That was the characteristic of military. They won't charge you to court. They will either humiliate you in detention or punish you in one way or the other. But we were not tortured. But to be isolated was a torture in itself. We couldn't see anything. The rooms we were put in were dark, no light, nothing. The window was up there, very small window, to let in the air. That was a nasty experience of one of my detention experiences in journalism. The one that was very intriguing, we wrote a report on a fraud, a suspected fraud that was suspected to have involved a professor of anatomy at the University of Ibadan, Department of Anatomy. The money was a huge amount. My reporter reported it on the front page, and we wrote an editorial on it. Second day, I was detained as editor of the paper for putting it out. And I said, why? They said, it's a lie. That first of all, we said we rely on a reliable source. That which source? What is our source? Or who was the source? We said, well, we are not obliged to give you our source. Even if you take us to court, we won't give you our source. Not knowing that my reporter had disclosed to the police that his source was from the University of Ibadan, and he gave the name, and the man was arrested. Eventually, the man was fired. So it was a case of non-conformity with confidentiality of the source, which is unethical. But in my own case, they detained me for about 3 weeks in police cell. And newspapers were shouting that I should be brought out for trial, but they didn't. It was not, it was police and National Security Service encounter. The police was interviewing me, the NSO was also interviewing me, and eventually they transferred me from Ibadan police headquarters to Lagos to face the NSO people. Eventually, the story was proved right when the man, the central figure involved in the suspected fraud was arrested and taken to court for trial. I was vindicated. The newspaper was vindicated. But I suffered a lot. Of all the detentions that I had experienced, that was the worst. Because, first of all, I was not fed. Secondly, I was tortured. Thirdly, I was not allowed to be visited. I've never had that type of thing before. The Abacha regime detained me not on account of my journalistic things. They said a story involved some people, also involved me, and that I was planning against the government. I was conspiring with some people, a case of conspiracy, so to say. And I said, even those people that you have mentioned from me, I've never met them before. I don't know them. Who are they? Where are they from? Where did we meet? I was there for not too much, about 11 days. 11 days detention. In that case, I saw a lot of trouble that happened to other people. People brought in and taken out later, only to be told that that man had been killed or had been shot. So that gave us some fear that it will be our turn, to be shot or to be taken away to an unknown place during the Abacha regime. Eventually, it was a miracle, because one morning I was just in that detention. I met Falaye, Chief Olu Falaye. He was also detained in that cell, and he was the chairman of the detainees. So when I was introduced to him, I said, Baba said, Dayo, what's your problem? I said, no, they brought me here last night, and I said, take it easy. In fact, I joined their this Christian fellowship team. Baba was the pastor, and some others who assist him, so we will sing praises to the Almighty God, and so on and so forth. Even in singing praises there, we may be in that session, and the police officers will come and say, excuse me, you, the three of you I wanted. We were still in prayer, and they will take them away, and they may never come back again. So Falaye was there, Fasehun was there, the late Fasehun now was in that detention, and many others. So I spent about 2 weeks with them. Miraculously, one morning they just came to me and announced, Dayo Duyile, is he here? Is he in this cell? And I said, yes, I'm here. Present, sir. He said, please, you are wanted in the office. I thought that was my turn to be shot, or to say bye-bye to the world. So when I got to the office, says, you had a wristwatch we took from you. I said, yes. Your belt, he said, is this your belt? Because they gave me about 7 types of belts. So I took mine. Your shoes, look at those shoes there. Then I took mine. I said, come and sign this. You are released. There are 2 situations. The situation that I've just described, in which I was involved, is quite different from the situation now. The journalists now are younger and we say visionary. In our own days, we relied and depended on our leaders in the newsroom, in the establishment. Here, now, I think the younger journalists have their vision and are more independent. Maybe because of the emergence of technology, communication technology. In those days, we were using typewriter. There was no digitalization. There was just working on your own. And you had to depend on your senior reporters or your editors and so on. virtually now, the new journalists, the younger journalists are working from home. They just speak to their newsrooms on their phone, on their computers, and so on. We had in that experience. So I would say that they have more liberal situation, and that technology that has come now encourages them to be independent and be visionary. In our own case, we were caged. We depended on assignments given to us. There was no push from individual journalists that, oh, let me go and do this story. No, but now the young journalists are doing it, except that the ethical aspect of it is being criticized. Most of them, or many of them, because I haven't got any research to back up what I'm saying now. Many of them are said to be more interested in making money than making news. So now there is this debate in the newsrooms, in the University Department of Mass Communication, during lectures on ethics. What do we do with this dilemma that is creating problem for news dissemination and the disseminators? Money, money, money. Especially journalists' relationship with politicians now in Nigeria is a very precarious situation, in the sense that the politicians have easy money. Journalists don't have money, but they attract journalists with money to do what journalists should not do. So that problem is also unethical. It's there to be solved. Who's going to solve it? They said the students, the journalists training in journalism, in mass communication, in universities, in polytechnics, in Institute of Journalism, should imbibe the culture of professional ethics. Yes, we teach them all these things, but when they go out of the premises of the training institutions, they behave otherwise. We cannot do much about that. That is the challenge that we are having now. The commercialization of news is peculiar to Nigeria. It's not done in Ghana media. There are two things. You either advertise and pay, because advertising is paid communication, or you call a press conference to address the issue you want to address, you want the public to know. That's not commercialized. You don't pay for that. But in Nigeria, we pay for it. And I think that's what you call a sort of legacy from Babangida's regime. It was the regime of General Babangida that brought in this commercialization thing in the news. Before that time, there was no commercial news. News was news, sacred, untouchable, factual. But now, a company gives you money and asks you to broadcast, to publish particular news. You take the money, you issue, you issue receipt for it, then you take it to the newsroom. Then the editor asks you, has it been paid for? Say yes. Okay, go and write it out. That's not journalism, as far as I'm concerned. That's paid journalism, which is not allowed in ethics. NBC, Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, was always going cap in hand to the government for money to run the organization, and the NTA. He said, look, I'm tired of giving you all this subsidy. Go and find a way of finding money. All these things you are broadcasting free. Why not take money? And that was the genesis of commercialization of news. And now it's spread. Even in private newspapers, private radio, they are now commercializing news. That's a legacy from Babangida. I couldn't advise him because the thing came to us as a surprise. And it has now become a permanent feature in the life of media in this country. But I would say that without commercialization, the newspapers can still survive, because they will survive on advertisements, and advertorial and other things like that. It may not be as much, but what we are having now, to me, is a mess. From General Gowon to the last military regime, all the evils they perpetrated went with them. Nobody was accused, nobody was jailed. But to say that one is more corrupt than the other will be difficult for me to see now. I will say that all of them were corrupt, but some were more corrupt. Buhari had two faces. He had the soldierly face or the military face and the civilian face. His soldierly face he was not alone. I believe that he was guided by his colleague, Ide Agbon, during his regime. I think Ide Agbon did all the work at that time to instill discipline into Nigerians. But when he returned the second time as civilian head of state or president, then it was exposed. The advisors and his other colleagues, his ministers, took advantage of his weakness. Yes, Buhari was a weak leader in terms of his presidency. So many things that happened wouldn't have happened. And they were making money. All of them that surrounded him, every one of them became richer than they came in. I think I got the idea of going into academia from Nigerian Institute of Journalism. I was appointed director of Nigerian Institute of Journalism in 1986 or so in Ogba. And that was where I started lecturing journalism. At that time, I practiced journalism both on radio, television, newspaper, magazine for about 30 years. And so I became director of that institute to train young ones in journalism profession. I was excited because Alhaji Jakande, may so rest in peace, gave me that opportunity. It was during that period, although I had my master's degree, that I said, wow, this is an opportunity for me to go into academia. Let me go and do my PhD and then go fully into academia. Then I got involved in writing applications to universities, both abroad and at home. And I got admitted to Michigan State University in the United States of America. I was surprised when they even gave me scholarship to pursue my PhD and gave me teaching assistantship, maybe because I was already teaching journalism in NIJ. But I couldn't take the opportunity because Alhaji Jakande said, no, he won't allow me to travel now because I've just established a new program in the Institute of Journalism, which gave the opportunity to professionals in journalism, in public relations, in advertising, in marketing, to come and do 1 year program in the evening. That nobody will be able to supervise this new program that you have brought, so you cannot go. So I lost that opportunity. I got another opportunity elsewhere in Canada, and so many. So that was generating in me the idea of having a PhD to go into academics fully. But since I didn't have the opportunity, I stayed. But I didn't kill the idea. The idea was still burning in me until so many years after. I made a lot of efforts to go and have my PhD for more than 28 to 30 years. But the opportunity didn't come until I retired from active journalism in 1995. So I went to Jamaica on sabbatical leave to Jamaica. We call that place University of West Indies in Kingston, Jamaica. I spent 2 years there in the Department of Mass Communication. There, the fruit of the plant of going to academics germinated fully. I saw my colleagues, my Jamaican colleagues from journalism practice, in academics, teaching one subject or the other and going back to the newsroom in the evening to do their work. I said, oh, I should have done this in Nigeria. I should have gone to the University of Lagos or any of the universities and be doing my newsroom activities at the same time. I said, getting back home, I will do that. So when I finished my sabbatical, although I was also given opportunity, admission to do my PhD in Jamaica, but I said home would be the best. So I came back home. Then I enrolled at the University of Lagos. Again, something stalled that admission that year. I couldn't go. So eventually, when I finished everything I had to do in Lagos and came to settle in Ondo, the idea of going into academics came to me again. Why not go for your PhD? And that's after I had done many things in all the universities that I taught. Because after leaving the Nigerian Institute of Journalism, I taught in about 4 or 5 universities as senior lecturer. I started with in the Department of Mass Communication in Akungba, Adekunle University, where I was the first HOD of the Department of Mass Com. As a matter of fact, I started that Mass Com department with a few other people, then moved from there to Joseph Babala University. I hadn't got my PhD yet. I was still using my master's degree and my load of experience on the field to teach. But the idea of having the PhD was still burning. And then about 6 years in Joseph Babala University, I moved to, I think, Elizade University, or was it Wesley University, Ondo. All these universities that I've taught, I was mingling with professors, Doctor of Philosophy holders in this course, in that program, in this. So I decided at last that old idea to stay put in academics must now be realized and actualized. So I decided to go to the University of Lagos for my PhD at the age of, I think I was 78. And when I got there, people were surprised because it had already been my university. I did my first degree there, I did a diploma there, I did my master's there, and now my PhD. Even those people who were going to teach me, many of them had read my books to pass their degrees in those days. And incidentally, one of my lecturers said, wow, so this is Dayo Duyile. I read your book, 2 of your books. In fact, one of it I got A. And now it's to be my lecturer. Can you see the irony of life? And I said, Oga, how will I teach you now? All these things you want to learn, we learn from you. I said, no, don't worry about that. I'm a student. I'm a doctoral student. You have to teach me. So I had to put off all those, what we call outward self-esteem to be a student at 79. The emergence of early newspapers in this country. That was the thesis that I presented. And when I successfully defended it, I was surprised to receive more than 200 congratulatory messages from home and abroad. Not knowing that people were even watching me. Can this man do it? Will he finish? Will he abandon it? And I was going to my lectures from Ondo town to Lagos every three days. Gathering my data took me to England because I was investigating the publication of the early newspapers like Ìwé Ìròyìn fún àwọn ará Ẹ̀gbá àti Yorùbá, which was established in 1859 in Abeokuta by Reverend Henry Townsend of the CMS mission. The record was not there. Neither was the record in the Nigerian National Library. The National Library didn't have it. They only had a few pages of that newspaper. The University of Ibadan archives didn't have it. Oh, it's a disgrace to whoever is the custodian of our past heritage. I had to go to University of Birmingham in England to look for that material, to gather the data for that my thesis, because that university has, I think they have a library called Cadbury Research Library in Birmingham University, and that library is the custodian of all that happened to Reverend Henry Townsend, what he did, what he wrote, the newspaper that he produced, the printing press, and so on and so forth. So it was a comfortable place for me to do my research. I stayed there for 2 months, and I'm very grateful to the library and the assistants there that gave me the cooperation to do all I did. When I got back here, and I did a little bit of that research too at the British Library in London. Yes, the British Library also assisted me. They had a little bit of what I was looking for. But it's a shame that we here in this country, the National Library hasn't anything much to write about on what happened to Iwe Iroyin fún àwọn ará Ẹ̀gbá àti Yorùbá. And the second newspaper that was established in 1863 by Robert Campbell, that the American mulatto, that was another newspaper. And Robert Campbell too was an assistant in Iwe Iroyin fún àwọn ará Ẹ̀gbá. He was an assistant editor assisting that man. I got all these facts from Birmingham University Cadbury Library. So when I finished and defended my thesis in Lagos, I could see in the faces of the professors who were to judge on my thesis whether it was good or not. I could see some surprise in them. One of them even asked me, "So because of this matter, you went to England?" I said, "Yes." "Who paid for the expenses?" I said, "Of course, the researcher." As a researcher, I must find a way of getting my data. That was what I wanted to do. So I saved up to it, and I went to England for that time, for that period, to gather the materials. He said, then he rose from his seat and asked his other members to rise. That we want to doff our hats to this researcher for taking the pain to do all that and for giving us this fact. He had actually contributed to knowledge, and I had no reason to deny him his degree of Doctor of Philosophy in Mass Communication. So I was hugged, surprisingly, by all of them. I took photographs with them, and I was celebrated. But that was not the end of it. My former students at NIJ, 3 of them, based in America and in Netherlands and in England, came together to celebrate me and invited me to Netherlands to honor me for doing my PhD at 82. I'm now going to 83, and I'm still not yet finished. Wow. Yes, I'm trying to go for my postdoctoral fellowship. What I'm trying to say is that there's no limit to pursuing what you want to pursue further until one says, or the Lord says, enough is enough, and you are called back to where you come from. But as far as I'm concerned in Nigeria, all the media put together, they are operating, yes, under libertarian concepts or theory, but he who pays the piper still dictates the tune.